Yeah, I don't know. It was hard to find it particularly profound or added anything new, but I didn't feel like that was a fault of the book,
Yeah, I can
if
see
that
that.
makes sense.
I didn't really see it as like profound. I just thought it was a very like unique case of documentation for something so
Yeah.
like it was the almost the orderliness to it. Like they just had everything is on record.
It is interesting. Like I felt like it made it sometimes less,
It almost became numb.
yeah, it made it less interesting in a way because like they weren't even really analyzing it at all for a good chunk of the book, and it's almost just documentation. And
Yeah,
there's some pretty horrible stuff that happens, and it just
yeah.
kind of just gets said, and
You like the
there's
numbers just turn into statistics, like going right
yeah,
away.
it's very interesting. I've
I
never read. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say in preparation for this, I reread chapters 7, 8, and 9, I think, which are
Of
the
this book.
massacre chapters.
Yeah.
Like I reread those ones and listened like to them again and went, okay, what got covered in this part? Because that's where it really gets.
Another thing is I had to listen to this because I just was traveling most of this.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad listen though.
Yeah, I think it was hard with they talked about the
The numbers,
pictures,
the numbers get really blurred though.
the photographs as well.
Hmm.
I obviously can't see the
Yeah,
photographs.
there
Well,
should be a
I
bunch of
eventually
PDFs
found
of them.
them. Yeah, I found the PDF eventually after I got home, but
I didn't look at them myself.
um,
Is there anything in there that's really important?
well, I'm just now looking at them. I mean, I remember reading like the descriptions of the photographs of like the men standing over the women,
Oh,
but
is that in there?
at least on the audible
Yeah, that's what
version,
I have.
like the afterword or
That's what I
whatever.
have. I just didn't
Oh,
see that part yet.
yeah, they describe it in the afterword, or I think 25 years later, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's where I was
Um,
looking stuff.
but scrolling through it, I don't. I
I
mean,
mean,
there's one where there's a bunch of dead bodies,
I've
but
seen photos from the Armenian genocide, so it's like I've seen genocidal photos before.
yeah, I mean, it's not anything again new.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I thought the format was kind of interesting.
very
Uh,
scattered at times.
yeah, on one hand, I appreciate that it's different and it's sort of it almost feels like I didn't know what to expect going into it in terms of like what the point of the book was, but it feels more like the foremost part was to document rather than analyze. And obviously, there's a good amount of analysis, but
It was kind of weird how they like had some like background story kind of like arch on going because they start in
yeah,
Jozefow. They start you there,
yeah,
and then they take you away from it.
I don't get it. I don't get that. I don't get that structure at
It's
all.
only like once you get to like chapter 7, you hear about Jozefow again, and you're like, okay, it's back in the same place. Oh, okay, we're about to get real heavy though.
Yeah,
That chapter is so intense
I,
for me at least.
I wonder if they just like thought it would be too boring to start with the police structure or something like that.
I think it's just kind of context.
But it was so weird to like talk about that morning, um, and then go just talk about the police structure for a long time.
Let me get my. I have some bookmarks I made of this chapter, especially, but
Oh,
I
nice!
find
You read it
it's.
on Kindle.
Yeah, I have to get both versions.
Mhm.
But for me, like, it was so weird. Like, what do you think most of? Do you think a lot of them lied? By the way, in their testimonies,
Oh,
like not shooting women or children or infants.
I'm sure some of them lied. I don't feel like I don't know if I would say I don't know. It's so hard to tell, right? I feel like the people that they got testimonies for were probably a small portion
No, I
of.
mean, far as I know, like the documentation you talked
Was
about
it
at the
ever?
beginning, it's everybody.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, everyone that they could of the soldiers. That's why it's so well documented.
I feel like they probably lied, but not to like a huge extent where they, there are tons of women and children.
I think
But
they were afraid that if they told the truth, they might get killed.
yeah, I'm sure. I feel like there was definitely some embellishment, and they probably did lie.
Yeah.
But I
Well, it's
think it's
because like
probably coming from a
they
place
were
of
being
fear.
tried for war crimes and such. Like
Yeah,
still at that point.
I mean, I feel like just like most people, I mean, the book argues that most people in that position would end up being killers. I think most people in
Yeah,
that
I
position would probably be pressured to lie.
I remember something they talked about how like we have a late there's people who have a latent potential to do this kind of stuff, but it's
Yeah,
only when they're being like in an environment that motivates them to do it.
Yeah.
If you take away the environment, they suddenly go back to normal.
Hmm.
And I think that's the big part of what we all have.
It was kind of what did you think about the other? I like that whole chapter where it just kind of
Hmm.
he argues with that other author, basically.
It's like towards the end and afterwards stuff, right?
Yeah, that's
It,
like
it was
that was the
very
same
interesting. It was very odd.
annoying academic discussion that I said for denial of death, where
At
I was
least he
just
was
like,
upfront about it, kind of.
yeah, like I kind of this one was definitely more justified than denial of death, where
He was kind of just
the,
arbitrarily,
picking out some random
and
guy
like he
that
wasn't
no one
talking
else
about people.
knows.
Yeah, he wasn't talking about people who have already said their ideas long ago.
No, yeah,
Just like someone who's actively in the debate with him.
yeah. So I thought that was funny.
It was.
Um, I kind of want to withhold judgment of that other guy without before
Sure. Yeah.
instead of like not reading his
What was
stuff.
the
Although it
what was his
sounds
key
like it was
points
kind of
though?
dumb.
Like I can't remember like his key points.
I think that it was like very unique to
Semitism,
anti-Semitism.
right?
That it's
He,
always going to be like it's sort of he also has like a latency thing where it's always going to be present and certain things will trigger anti-Semitism.
yeah. I think I remember now. It's coming back to me a little bit. Like his ideas for like the
Weird
explanation
chapter.
of the events, like why they
Mhm.
were caused. I didn't agree with the other authors as much. Like it just doesn't.
No, it doesn't make much sense. But again, we're probably reading someone's like
True. But
I
even
don't
like,
know if this is a straw man version of this man's
well,
argument.
it probably is to some degree, but like I'm sure that like the reasons given about how like we when we are in these scenarios feel like we're obligated to do something because someone's gonna have to do it. That's a really good reason to like motivate people to do
Yeah,
things.
I totally agree. I mean, I think and Ordinary Men is a really old book, right?
Yeah, it's very old. It's
So
rather old.
I feel like at this point it's more of a mainstream. It's a very mainstream theory, and I subscribe to it in terms of like societal pressure being really such a big factor, and it's really hard for people to
Well,
kind of
it's like
act against it unless they're
it's
primed for it.
almost like the it's I don't really call it a societal pressure. It's like a duty to like a group, like your soldiers do.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like a cultural identity
I guess
too.
that is a social pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Um, I mean, I think we've all been in those cases where we've done stupid shit
Actually,
because we felt pressured, especially like when we were kids and stuff. But
oh yeah, that's a big one. Is like well, as kids, we'll make do terrible things that we just regret as adults.
yeah, and I think that's just like a great example. And as we get older, I think it's also easier to not do those things because generally adults are a little bit better at that. But when all the adults around you are killing people,
Yeah, it's culture.
you wonder if that just makes you go back to doing horrible things.
Well, I think if you're raised
Yeah,
around that, especially,
yeah,
it becomes your nature.
yeah. Well, these guys are like pretty old, like in their
Yeah, these
50s,
are
and
all
weren't
adults
raised.
still.
Yeah, and that's kind of the interesting argument of it, right? Is that these are a group of people who don't have as much pressure and indoctrination, and that's not how they were raised.
They were big on covering in the book. I remember people how they don't actually have like had a lot of Nazi party alignment in this
Yeah.
group. Like there's only some that were,
Hmm.
but they could still take these relatively not desirable like soldiers for this task, and they eventually
Make them
became
do it.
committed to it.
Well, like when they first started doing, when they talked about the massacre,
Jozefow,
yeah, like just how
how
it
is
did
his
seem
blood?
very well, it seemed very amateurish, right? Like it seemed completely non-structured. Like they just showed up to this place and like, all right, start
Yeah,
shooting.
it's the parallel because you heard about the second massacre. Like it's right two
Yeah, and it
chapters
got
after.
better.
It
Hmm.
was like systematic almost. Like they the other
They
guys.
learn fast.
They had the Jews dig the grave first, then
Yeah,
like everybody piles in file by file. That's like where it goes. Wow, that's a mood shift.
yeah, like it was very, very intentional and like orchestrated.
It's not
But
just
I,
like bodies all laying over the floor.
yeah, I think that first massacre is very, I don't know, that part was more actually telling for me that it wasn't like these people clearly weren't very experienced in doing it.
They had to be shown how to make a neck shot, and then they still
Yeah,
failed it repeatedly.
and it's just like
Oh
for them to
god.
be that inexperienced, the moment, like the inertia should probably was pretty big, right?
Yeah.
And for most of them to still go through with it, I think it's very interesting.
I'm like thinking about how like I hear like feel like every time I heard a soldier who was like tapping out, they shot 7 times. I'm like, how do you get through thousands of people with people only shooting 7 times?
Yeah, that is
Like, how
crazy,
much
right?
cycling do you have to do? And that
It,
makes me think about how many people are doing this.
yeah,
Like, you
I
have
mean,
how many?
do they say
They said about 500 was in the group.
500, right? I guess 500.
Times 7 is only 350 though.
Yeah, but like that's like the middle
There's
of the
if
day,
everyone
right?
only did 7.
And they had to do. Then they have to. Was that the one where they had to go until the morning and then they had to
Yeah,
like stop in the night?
yeah, Jozefow they did.
Yeah. So that was probably like a pretty average number where you would be at in the middle of the day, 7.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the soldiers would shoot 7 and then they'd be done for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So you'd be just like dropping off numbers of soldiers you had to shoot with.
Yeah. And there's definitely probably people who did like
Yeah.
15 or 20
Well, it's true. There's probably the
more.
guns who are doing much more.
Yeah. And then some people just didn't do any. I it felt very realistic to me.
Yeah,
I just wasn't surprised.
I did find it interesting how much permitted non-shooting there was. I wasn't sure how I was
Yeah.
going to expect. I was expecting it to be much more forced, but it was very much. It seemed like this. Just they talked. His heart is weak. His nerves have gone.
Yeah. It's
Like
sort of interesting. I mean, it's almost like some of the leadership kind of knew that,
Trop especially.
yeah, that it wasn't like
It
it
was
was a
wrong.
pretty hard ask and it was wrong, and maybe they didn't even want to do it.
Orders are
And it
orders.
also still seems like it seems all kind of like unorchestrated, right? That it wasn't like a they didn't force anyone to do it. They kind of just like, all right, this is the mission today, and like if you aren't able to go through it, that's just reality, and they're not like mad about it or anything like that, or not enough to like force them to do their job. It almost feels like it feels like it's something extra in the job description, I guess. I don't know.
It feels like they were really big on the psychological burden to the men,
Yeah.
and I think that if you forced them to do it, like forced, the
Mhm.
psychological impact would be just too much. Like it would
Yeah.
have such an lasting effect on not just the men who do the shooting, but on the men as a whole. Like
I don't know if they I don't know if on the like in the on the day they really thought that far ahead though. Do you
what
think?
the leadership.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, I think they did.
Hmm.
The leadership, like I think they were very organized about it.
In
Like they
terms
might
of like
have some.
allowing for people to not do
Well,
it.
like I think in the opening chapter they talk about how Trop had actually discussed with his lieutenants,
Yeah.
the previous day, and then his one like you find the chapter. I have this.
Yeah.
Upon
I mean, a day isn't that long to discuss something, and I feel like
I just picture that like this whole event strikes me as so organized, so
hmm,
detailed. It seems like systematic mass murder,
yeah.
and like I think that's a big theme is bureaucracy of it, like
Yeah.
the death murderers.
Yeah.
I don't think
There's
it could be
another
not planned as the thing.
I don't think it's not planned. I think it's just that I don't know how much foresight into those details they thought.
True, because this
Especially
actually
people
was the part that was really like strapped for people. Like they had
yeah.
low manpower.
I feel like later on it might have been more deliberate, but I think in the on the day they probably only discussed it for like the people relevant who were saying, "Oh, these people don't have to keep shooting,"
Mm-hmm.
like Trop, etc. They
Oh,
probably hadn't had that many days to think about where they were like, "Oh,
what are
what
we gonna
about the
do?
psychological burden in like several years?" Or
Well, no, I think that because Trop like says that anyone who can't do this, like after he gives them the orders at Josephov, take your say now and step out.
yeah. I mean,
Any
I just don't know if that's like because of the burden or like the sustainable. I don't think he was thinking about the
Yeah,
sustainability.
he wasn't thinking about sustainability. It wasn't from that angle. It's like from humanitarian.
Yeah, I felt it was like very much more short term, and he was focusing more on just like the discomfort of the act rather than
Yeah,
making sure he had enough men in his battalion
true.
and
Yeah,
X amount
I
of
don't mean
food.
to say like he was like, are we gonna have enough manpower?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it felt very like they were playing it very by ear still, because you would think in a very organized operation that they would think about those things.
Yeah, I kind of remember if it's Trop himself. Like there was one guy who was apparently tasked with putting this whole thing together
Yeah,
because
I
he
don't
was.
think it was the guy who told Trop, right?
I think so.
Or like the people who told Trop,
But yeah,
because
it's
Trop
like
didn't even want to
yeah,
do
do it.
it. Yeah.
But it's like they had low manpower. They got to use what they have. So this was who they had.
pretty wild. I don't know if you've ever heard about like the banality of evil, which is pretty controversial, I think.
It sounds familiar to me. Like I just can't remember the definition of banality. Like
It's sort of like
I've heard this before. But it's like
it's Hannah Arendt. She's like I think she's a Jewish journalist, but she wrote a report on the trial of Eichmann.
mhm,
Adolf Eichmann, who was like one of the big organizers, and her whole like through line for that report was that Eichmann wasn't like some kind of monster, and he was just like kind of a paper pusher.
mm,
And it's the exact same idea of like the desk murder or whatever.
yeah,
I think there's a lot of controversy over that idea. And I always thought it was made sense that a lot of people kind of commit pretty evil things
when you're
without,
disconnected from it,
yeah, when just because you're disconnected and you're not,
thinking about it, it's not
yeah,
real. It's not in front of you.
it's almost like thoughtless.
It's almost like we live our lives without even realizing it's real.
Yeah.
Like something I experienced when I would listen to this book is like my head, like I have cataplectic seizures when I'm listening to this book.
Hmm.
Like my head will go,
Would
and
you actually?
yeah, yeah. Like I have it whenever I run into things that either disgust me or like I just
Hmm.
can't like comprehend in the moment. So like when I'm first hearing some of these massacres, my head is exploding.
Hmm.
And why did I get on this tangent for? Right, right, right. Um, wow, okay.
You were talking. Well, we were talking
Disconnect.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
disconnecting. Okay, bureaucracy. Right. Um, my goodness, this is a tangent.
Yeah, it seemed like it was gonna
Yeah,
be related.
it was. And I'll find it if I find it. Okay.
Okay. But yeah, I bring it up partly because it's apparently like a really controversial
Mhm.
idea still, and most people kind of say it's not accurate for Eichmann specifically. Um,
Hmm.
but just kind of interesting because it's almost the same argument for these people, right?
Yeah.
And maybe being like the grand organizer of the Holocaust is a little bit of a different thing and probably takes more intention.
Oh yeah, I don't
But
think it's definitely you have intention. Like something I noticed a lot is in this is like they run into like technical problems with logistics in this in the Holocaust,
yeah,
and it would be just like astonishing how they solved their logistics problems.
yeah, pretty quickly too.
And it's just like that's what human like
Like
ingenuity can
people,
do.
yeah, people definitely thought about this in
It's like
terms of
how
like
do we
how
make a
can we
solution?
kill, yeah, how can we kill people more efficiently and you know
And it's just
commit genocide in a very efficient manner that's very organized and
yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
yeah, the stuff with like the brains kind of being on people's faces,
Jozefow,
etc.
the forest of brains.
Yeah, that was, I felt like that specific day was
The one thing that I picked up the second time listening to this was in the second massacre where they had the mass grave.
Mhm.
I didn't realize that there was a part they were talking about the blood and water
The
had gotten
blood.
up to the knees.
Yeah, that's crazy that you would just be standing there and
That's why they're like we can't stand anymore.
I know, but
Yeah,
they're standing in it for probably several hours at some point.
yeah. What that I thought was kind of crazy when I listened to that. As I'm thinking about so the Jews that are gonna go in there and get shot have to go wade through this water.
That's I also like, yeah, I wonder what that must have.
That must have been awful. Can you imagine
And
just
like,
like descending into that water?
you know how they talk about how some of them argue that, oh, like the Jewish people didn't even resist
Yeah, like it seemed
all of
like there
that.
was a passive resistance in some of them.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, it's kind of interesting that they must have been in shock or something, but they kind of just committed themselves to it. And I think,
I think
I
it
mean, there's not much you can do, right?
Well, yeah, it's like it seemed like if it was a scenario where there were Jews that would be kept alive, like some at least, it changed the outlook for everyone because then you might be a family of one of those Jews being kept alive for work,
Hmm.
or you might be one of the Jews who's like going to work camp. But then there are scenarios where it's mass slaughter and no one's being kept alive, and you can tell,
Yeah,
and that's when it gets real, like you know,
yeah,
hopeless. And it
yeah. I
seems like
wonder
that's
what that
the attitude is hopelessness. Like
probably,
when
yeah.
it's systematic slaughter like that, it's hopeless.
Yeah, like imagine seeing that as you're like walking into it and knowing that's gonna be you in like a second.
Well, it's I think that the praying is if you can fly, you'll die quick.
Yeah.
Like you won't have to like suffer like some of them did though.
Yeah, like where they were buried alive and still moving underneath
That's
the
like yeah,
dead
you're
bodies.
basically also drowning too if you think about it because you're going to be laying in water like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a really brutal.
Scene.
Yeah.
It's a really brutal scene, and that was kind of like I really found that part to be the most valuable for me in the book.
What
The
in
scenes in
what way?
like the way that they tell the story of the massacres.
Hmm.
Like it's to shed light on something that, for myself at least,
I would never have thought about those details, kind of
and
thinking
it's
about
like
the
I never
massacres.
could even comprehend what this was like.
Yeah.
And it, it's a book, so it doesn't come fully close to it, but it came close enough that I got to like experience and open my mind to that kind of thing.
Yeah, like you can picture like what it might feel like if brains were smattering your
And
face
yeah, it's just like
or like
the guy
walking
next to
into
you shooting and he
blood.
just it's over
Yeah.
your.
Yeah.
My question is, do you think you could have said stepped out when they first offered?
I don't know, honestly.
Are you good at breaking away from the group? Like, do you stand alone
I
in your
think
mind?
now after reading this book, I would be better, frankly. Um, I don't know. I honestly, it's hard to say.
That's fair.
Like, I'm not. I can't say I'm very much of a conformist. But I am also. I'm successful in my life partly because I do know how to conform.
And that's pretty typical, you know.
Yeah, like I can't. I would say I'm more of a free thinker and original thinker than
But do
my
you
peers, but I don't know.
are you willing to stand on your ideas like away from your peers?
That's what I'm saying. I don't 100% know. I think in the moment, if I didn't know this was coming, it would be unclear to me. I hope I would, but I don't. I think, well, again, after reading this book, I'd probably be more prepared to say no.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, but there's still a level of preparation. I think if it really caught me off guard, I don't
So
know. It depends on the context too. Like,
yeah.
if I go to work tomorrow and they hand me a gun, they say shoot this guy, I
Well,
probably
I
would
think
say
that
no,
you're
frankly.
a soldier, like in this scenario here, like you're a police officer. Like it's more expected. Like if you get orders like this, you might have to follow them. But
Yeah,
when I think about myself, at least, I can confidently say I would step out. Only because gotten. I'm the type of person who I will actually just go against and stand alone on things.
yeah,
If I don't agree with something, I will walk away from it, or I will publicly announce that hey, this is not okay.
hmm,
Like I've stood up to cyberbullying in multiple communities, even to the point where I've gotten like I became a pariah from them because
yeah.
I just was exiled out. And it's kind of the person I am. Is I speak against what I don't believe in, but I do that because I have like in moments where I'm just on my own, like by myself, I assess what are my values,
Yeah.
and I have values like my value of life, and my value of like what people's right to choices. And when I have moments that like catch me, and I have to answer these kind of situations, I, it's just easy. But that's
I
only
mean,
because I plan ahead of time.
right. I mean,
I think values have to be decided ahead of time
for sure.
because they
Would
make it in
you
the moment
Are
emotional.
you someone that would end up in this kind of scenario, like being in the police?
No, no, it wouldn't.
Yeah, that's what I struggle
But I
with
think
because
this was drafted. They were drafted.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I don't know
I would actually go.
how it would feel like if I were drafted and had then spent several months being like in the police, etc., and doing that.
Well, actually,
Again, like
they're
if
volunteered, right? Because they wanted to not go to the real army.
yeah, I think they
And
were also like not deemed super fit for the army, right?
yeah,
Because they're older and things like that.
and I'll admit, I'm the kind of person who I would go for that route of okay, I'll do the police instead of going to the soldier. I
Yeah,
would do that.
it seems sort of like almost like
Uh,
a low key thing to coast until retirement,
or to just to try and not get
to
sent to
like
war to die.
compared to being in the army. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I would do that. That's a plan I would make.
Yeah.
So I would end
I
up in that scenario potentially.
I don't know if I would say I think I would definitely, if I didn't say no initially, I would definitely probably, I feel like I would be the type to say no after a few times, which is not amazing.
I mean,
But
it is what it is.
I don't 100% know. I mean, like, I can't also think of myself just being instantly transported to that scenario. I think
I
if I
think I
walked in as the person I am, I would probably say no, but I don't know how I would be if I were slowly acclimated and became a police person, etc.
I think of myself, if I didn't say no initially and I somehow like lost the opportunity, I would feel a heavy like feeling of I can't speak up until I shot once, and then I think I'd stop.
Yeah, I could see myself stopping after one
But I would just feel like in that
easily.
moment, if I didn't speak up immediately, I can't speak up now.
I mean, there's so much pressure. Yeah, like I mean but that's a lot of people, right? He talks about where he asked, and then like they were given probably 5 minutes at most, and then they continued on their way to actually do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. It's like I feel like I'd be staring at the person, like my first person I'm supposed to shoot with the gun, and I'd be like, I can't do it, but I will myself to pull the trigger once, and then be like, just I can't.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like even that is different from saying no as the person you are now, right? Because like even if they weren't anti-Semitic and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, they spent probably years being in that culture where they knew most people
Like
or a lot of people viewed them as not human.
so many people knew the Jews though, or like knew people
Yeah,
from the Hamburg and such. And that's kind of crazy. It's like they know the people they're shooting.
yeah,
Like one of them was a World War I veteran.
I know that was wild. Was yeah, that was one of the later massacres, right?
No, it was
That
like
was like in
it
the
was the,
ghetto,
I think it was the second one or the first one. No, it's the first one.
maybe.
It
Was it
was
the
because
first one?
yeah, they had to be face to face to be able to hear the fact that he was
Oh
calling
yeah,
out,
you're right. You're right. You're yeah,
and that's crazy to think. Like he fought for Germany in World War I,
yeah.
but he's a Jew, so they're gonna kill him.
It's a lot of yeah. I've actually so I know some people in the military, and I've actually talked to there's apparently like I don't know how much you know about this, but there's a lot of war literature that
Mm-hmm.
and they teach you to depersonalize
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the military and
It's
um
psychological. But
yeah,
you get through
it's
it.
kind of wild. um
It's kind of brainwashing though too.
yeah, and so I just feel like it's also still
Yeah.
I think even if you would say no, definitely now that you might, you know, you might hesitate a little bit more.
I just had a weird thought. You ever watch
What?
South Park?
Yeah.
So this is gonna sound really random. They talk about how when a pimp has a hoe,
Yeah.
she's got a limit. She's got a mileage.
I don't think I watched this episode, but keep going.
Okay, basically it's like, and when she hits that mileage, she's no good anymore. And I thought about like, what does that mean? That's the limit of like how many times the soldier can shoot,
Yeah. Hmm.
and then that's their mileage.
Yeah.
And it's like that's a weird analogy, but that just makes sense to me now. Like you can only do so much of this thing before you can't do anymore.
I think raw. I think with the infrastructure to keep brainwashing you and to process the emotions, you can expand. I mean, everyone has kind of like a
Oh
finite
yeah,
limit,
I
but
think it's like you can like keep the limit going if you like sustain the person, but like
yeah.
eventually they hit a hard limit usually, like
Yeah.
where you can't continue it any longer.
Yeah. I think that's true of most things, though. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
burnout's pretty high,
That's why I
and
made the hoe analogy. Is like
yeah, I mean,
it's
people
something that
feel it
exists.
in tech and
Yeah,
software and coding, and certainly medicine. It's burnout,
yeah. The
and
education
that's
system for medicine, especially too.
yeah.
How's
So,
that?
um, I don't know. I think we're improving, and that's all you can ask for. I think I'm someone who feels I'm a little bit more rare in the fact that I find my work very fulfilling. But I'm also in academics, and I've sort of been very deliberate about not doing things I don't love.
That's the key.
Especially, yeah, and I think a lot of people aren't as deliberate in terms of they would choose a higher salary or they would choose more prestige,
Yeah, that's the.
and
Well, what do
so
you typically do? Like, do you write articles or
I do everything. So I see my own panel of patients, which I'm very vocal about, partly because of like skin in the game and things like that, which
yeah?
I kind of bring up as well. But um, I split my time sort of evenly between seeing my own patients, supervising, and teaching residents to see patients.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other third is mostly my research and administrative things. So I help run one of our, I'm like assistant medical director of one of our clinics. So I do a lot of meetings and logistics for that. And then I also do my research.
I,
So it's a
it's
really good mix.
it's funny to say, but I love HR work.
I don't mind it. I
Yeah,
love conflict resolution and things like that,
I like
and
the planning and
hiring,
scheduling
and
and
recruiting. Yeah, I enjoy it.
yeah, yeah.
But I
I
think
love
I'm
that.
pretty unique in that, for like a doctor.
Yeah, yeah. For doctor, like I do my own kind of team management because like I have like a team of people who work under me, and I
Mhm.
organize them and all. And it's like I just kind of enjoy like the act of like working across time zones and finding like scheduling meeting times and like
I think that's pretty common for people who are interested in leadership.
yeah,
I can say that I'm not in that field, but I've like dated some people in that field of like HR and whatnot, and they all kind of a lot of them read the same books that we have read and enjoy those things, and it's sort of a personality.
truthfully, I fell into my leadership role, wasn't even going for it at all.
I think that's pretty
I
common.
was originally just a team member, and then it's like one second I'm the editor, and next it's like I'm hiring people.
Mm.
Like
I mean, it's fun. I like it. I
it
don't know
makes
if I
me
would like
feel like
only
I
doing that.
have the ability to cultivate my talent,
Yeah, I
and
like
that's
being very hands-on with like the team that I work with.
yeah. Though I remember my first time having to do a firing, it's like that was hard.
Yeah, it's like a bad breakup,
Well, it's like it was
oftentimes.
my first hire too.
Hmm.
Like I had hired two people initially on my job, and it's like the first one she didn't produce a single thing of work
Hmm.
for a month, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And like next month she didn't do anything. It's like I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to let you go.
I feel like it's not as bad.
Well,
I
it's
mean, it's
like
still probably hard, but
it felt kind of like embarrassing because I had to tell my manager, hey, I'm firing this person,
yeah.
and it's like she was my first choice.
But at least I feel like there's a good reason, and also it's like your choice in a way, or like you could easily be aligned with that decision.
True, and I think the big thing for me that helped was my second choice was so good.
Yeah.
Like my second choice was an all star, and what's I was a little intimidated at first because I thought we weren't going to hire more than one person at first,
Hmm.
so he had to like get a special slot. I mean, actually,
So
do you know Avo Aldos
no. How do you spell that?
Aledos from the Inland
Hmm.
Academy?
Oh, I don't know him personally,
Yeah,
but
he's a
I've
casting
seen
lead.
his name.
Yeah, he was my second hire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I've
Wait,
become
really?
really good friends with him over the years.
Huh. I don't play mid lane. I play jungle, so
Yeah,
I'm not in.
yeah, he's actually one of my really close friends now. It's like over our 2 year relationship we've been working together.
Really?
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah. I actually I work with another good friend of mine who was I'm he's kind of like my person I'm mentoring.
Hmm.
I've been doing that with him for like 2 years as well, and he's from Costa Rica, 19-year-old kid. I've been helping him, learn to understand his emotions and be able to think critically. And I actually hired
Is
him
this
this
for
year.
like work? Okay, I
Yeah,
guess
yeah,
it's
I
now
hired
for
him.
work.
Oh yeah, it's like I had an opening like a while ago because I've done this project for nearly 3 years.
What project do you do again?
I work on a combo editing project. Like I work for FaceCheck,
Mm.
and I work as a
Wait, for like League face
yeah,
check?
yeah,
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
yeah. I was a Discord admin for a year unpaid, and then I
Hmm.
saw a upcoming project for recording champion combos.
Hmm.
I have a lot of mechanical prowess, even if I can't always get a high rank, because when I play League, I'm really good mechanically. Stress though kills me.
Mm.
So real games, I mechanically flop a
Mm.
lot. But in practice duel scenario,
Yeah,
I have extremely good execution.
interesting. You're
So
like hilarious or hilarious or whatever.
well, yeah, yeah. Basically, like I can practice duel really well. But the thing is, I just had to show my boss because he was originally wanting to hire like grandmaster players.
Mm.
I was like, hey, I don't have that rank, but here's some videos of what I can do.
Hmm.
And I showed him some really hard combos that I was just executing, and he was like, okay, I'll give you a shot. He's like, how many champions can you play? I'm like, almost all of them. And he decided instead of hiring like champion mains for every single champion,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm gonna put you on a team of 3 people. You guys are gonna record them. And from there, it's like I realized quickly that hey, we need some structure to make it so that all the recordings are like the same kind of format.
Hmm.
So I started creating a style guide basically,
Yeah.
and he was so impressed by that. He's like, I want you to be the video editor. I didn't know how to video edit at the time.
Video editing's hard. I actually do it for my current research project.
Well, yeah, I had like 3 months to learn how to use Adobe After Effects and just get myself off the ground because like I knew nothing at the start.
It's like really time consuming. I
Yeah,
know.
it is. Like I've created a bunch of templates and things to like streamline my work and like uniform it.
Hmm.
I have macros that help me make the process a lot faster. What used to take me like 8 hours takes me like one, and I had to negotiate a raise because of that.
That's pretty cool. I had, I actually I didn't know. I knew you were doing some kind of like programming like tech thing.
Well, I work yeah
I'm
in the research and development for Paycheck as well.
hmm,
I'm not only a video editor.
gotcha.
I've actually climbed my way up to the top ladder, which has been really crazy. Like I get to make like decisions that change the direction of the company.
That's really cool. Congrats. I mean, that sounds like it's a pretty cool experience too.
It is. It's been just almost. It's like a dream kind of sometimes. Like I can't like feel like it's real. Like I went from being an unpaid server admin to being one of the top people in the company, and it's like it's just weird.
I mean, it sounds like it took a good amount of work and things like
It
that.
did.
So
It did.
yeah.
The main thing it took was just seizing moments.
Hmm.
Like when I got that server admin position, it's because I applied to be a moderator when there was an opening. I didn't get
Hmm.
hired. I didn't. They didn't take me on as a moderator, but they
Yeah.
saw my level of detail skill. Like and like, okay, you can be a server guru. It's like tech support basically.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like I saw the combo project in the pipeline. I didn't hesitate. I jumped on that opportunity,
Hmm.
and I've just had a lot of things that I just didn't wait. I just jumped all in.
I mean, I think being proactive is a very important skill.
I'd argue it's one of the most.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I sometimes struggle with people who are like too proactive but don't have the other fundamentals.
Like,
But
like oh, the kinds of like the reckless fools rush in.
yeah, but also like just people who are really good at their people skills and social skills but don't have the other skills necessary for. I mean, it's different because medicine also is it takes a broad skill set
Yeah,
instead of like being in. I
and
mean,
with very high risks.
yeah, like you can't just be a people person and be a physician, right? Like that's just not a thing. But you also can't only know medicine and be a physician and not have people skills.
Sure.
And I think there are people who are very proactive and just don't have the actual medical skills, and that's a struggle. But it might just be more related to the career.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing you say is like referring to people who they're good at playing like the popularity contest and like getting people to
Yeah,
like them and be sociable. They don't have the actual technical ability.
yeah. I think it's very important to have both,
Yes.
and I think missing one or the other is pretty bad.
It makes things complicated and very difficult to get through, I think.
Yeah. Going back to the book, I know you
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
that it
I
was
moved through a bunch of
valuable.
chapters.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
um, you're talking about how it's very valuable, kind of reading about the more historical accounts. Like what? That's sort of my question. Is like what? How does that add to your life?
Oh, for me, it's like it's not valuable like the historical account. It's just like hearing the massacre, like the
Yeah.
detailing of people committing the massacre.
Right.
I feel like whenever I hear about these kinds of events, it's always from the perspective of victim.
Hmm.
Hearing about it from the like perspective of the perpetrator makes it feel like I got to be in the shoes of the perpetrator by proxy for a second,
Yeah.
and that's something I don't feel like I'd get to experience elsewhere.
What did you take away from that experience?
I take away the mindset of I'm in the position of being the perpetrator, and how I felt like that bodily feeling of disgust and like just it's a whole bodily thing for me. Like
Hmm.
I empathize a lot really heavily with things even when I really wish I didn't. Like I can empathize
Hmm.
with being tortured to like to the degree I feel like it's like I can experience that pain myself psychologically.
Hmm.
So I actually just avoid anything that has torture in it, like
Hmm.
media wise, because I'll be in it. I'll be in it, and it's just
Hmm.
I can't do it. My grandmother watches a lot of like dark films and media, and like
Interesting.
I would have to leave the room.
Hmm.
But so yeah, I got to like put myself in that kind of shoes to what some degree of like the mental like anguish of the soldiers.
Is that gonna like change our behavior going forward?
I feel like it already has in a way.
In what way?
I feel as if I'm more aware of the potential for myself and others
Hmm.
to do things that are awful,
Yeah.
especially in the name of group conformity.
Hmm.
And like whenever I use this more as a lens. Like I said, I'm good at like breaking away from the group when I have to,
Yeah.
but this is more to keep me like cognizant of when other people likely won't.
Hmm.
I need to expect them to be more likely to favor the group than
Yeah.
thinking they'll do what I do and break away.
For sure.
Because I have sometimes I think that people will do the hard choice like I do. Like I'll make this really hard choice about something like on like scenario. I'm like, how come you didn't do that? And it's like I have to realize how hard that choice is for some people to make.
Yeah. I mean, is it not? Is it always easy for you?
It's generally something that I've gotten really good at doing. Like
Hmm.
I'm just not afraid to do it. Like I've walked away from so many scenarios that were not healthy for me or like that I was treated unfairly. I just walk away. Maybe it's
Mm.
stubbornness. Maybe it's just my pride. But I just am willing to walk away from things that are not good for me.
Yeah, I think it's a skill. I always talk about, especially with with jungling, like mental poise.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I
Top laner.
guess
I'm a top laner, so I do get that.
that's a really tough part of sometimes playing League is just saying no to bad decisions. Especially like as a jungler, if you don't mute all, it's just everything's a ping and like someone asking you to do something. But yeah, I think it's a skill that you have to practice, and I think most people don't really practice that. Obviously.
Yeah. I view League as like when I play it, it's like you're gonna get this negative exposure to like emotion a lot. Like
Mhm.
I think that's one of the beautiful parts about League
I love it. I mean, I
is being
specifically
exposed to negative
practice it.
emotion like that allows you to develop your sense of like self through your reaction.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier how your values are what you determine ahead of time.
Hmm.
If your values would say that I'm not gonna get mad, I'm not gonna blame other people, and I'm gonna try and figure out what I can do better. If you have that value and then you go into League, you can then apply that value, and that's the
Yeah.
thing that you shape yourself. Like if you're shaping yourself to be aligned with your values, you know, you might blame your teammates sometimes and be like, no, no, that was I slipped. But through enough repetition, you will align yourself to your values.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the main reason why I still
That's why I still
practice League.
play.
Yeah, I don't feel that strongly otherwise. League's actually one of the few games where I'm not like just naturally very good at. I
What
mean,
else did you used to play?
I played a lot of Magic. I used to travel for that. Even TFT, I like will
Oh,
sometimes.
yes.
I will play it after a three block, and we'll be watching videos and sometimes drinking alcohol. And like, I don't review anything, and I'm like masters there
Really?
without trying. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
impressive.
Nathan will often like check my replays and like look at the masters rank and forget that that's my TFT rank.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, it's not, but I don't like find that much pride in it's
yeah,
fun and it's
it's
kind of
fun.
cool. But I specifically play League because it's very hard, and I find that it challenges me to develop that resilience and also the mental poise to kind of stick to my values.
One thing I'll say is like there's an incredible burden that micro takes upon one's like energy levels.
Yeah,
That's why I play TFT sometimes. Is like I've done my three block and it's like I cannot physically like bear another like bout of that micro energy.
it's tiring. Yeah.
Like the amount of like high intensity energy it takes to use your fingers and controls like that, it's just so exhausting.
It is. That's sometimes a struggle for me even to like get my three block in because if I don't get great sleep for whatever reason, or if I'm busy at
Didn't
work,
eat enough.
I feel it so strongly that I know I'm going to be playing really inoptimal, and then that's just always an excuse not to play. But yeah, sometimes get your games in. But yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. I think I initially when I read this book, I struggled to see how it added to my life in a way, mostly because I felt like I've contemplated things like the banality of evil for a long time. I think
Yeah.
one of my main motivators for being in medicine is to kind of change a lot of the awful things that I saw growing
Mm.
up. And I'm someone who's constantly thought about what makes people do awful things.
Can you?
Um,
Are there anything you can say you have made a big difference on yet?
I think I made a big I mean, I'm pretty young in my career still, but I feel like I
Yeah.
made a big difference in my friends and the young doctors that I train and teach. I specifically do a leadership course in
You're
my
spreading a
program.
message for the future.
Yeah, man, I there's a lot more I want to do, but I think I have been able, and honestly, it's, patience for sure.
Yeah.
I think I'm definitely more, especially a lot of the young guys. I do a lot more psych stuff for them as their PCP, and I've feel like I made an impact on a few, like a handful, and
Well,
that's
that's what
frankly,
matters. It's a start.
yeah,
I like to think about it as if you help one person and you give them the right like message and intentions, they can hopefully go out and spread it to others.
that's the goal. I mean, that's how it happened to me, and that's been sort of my what I've chased in life is like finding out how these people. There's just you can point to a few role models in your life that really inspired you to be a powerful, virtuous force,
Yeah.
and to be able to be one of those people.
It's hard sometimes
It's
being someone.
hard, but it's also it's so worthwhile, and it feels like
Did you see the quote I shared in the book club?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually really like that. That's interesting.
Which will you take, the high road or the low road? Which one is longer? They're both
For
short.
sure. I never heard that one, but I really like that quote. Where did you get it from? Because it's also like zero votes, and I don't know who this
Yeah, it's
person
like
is.
I was looking through my old photos, like, and this is like from 5 years ago. I saved it. There's something about forgiveness and acceptance quotes,
Hmm.
or like
Interesting.
morality. I think it's quotes.com actually. But yeah, it's just this. It really struck me as your life's gonna be short either way, but what do you want to live that life like?
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely like I feel like I have a weird like advantage in that I got to take a midlife reset.
What do you
Like
mean?
I didn't.
Midlife? How old are you?
I'm
What?
26, so like I took at 22.
Hmm.
I got to remake who I am.
That's still very much early life. I
Yeah,
just want
like
to
it's early
clarify.
life, but it's like I
It's
got
not
to
what
have
people
I got to
typically
true, yeah,
make
yeah.
it
I
midlife.
spent like late like adulthood, like early adulthood.
Hmm.
I got to like decide all my values and who I wanted to be in that moment.
Hmm.
Like I actually discarded my entire self from earlier than 22. Like I have not a single thing about me really, other than playing League still, that resembles the person I was.
I mean, you have your memory of that.
I mean to say it's like everything in my behavior, every single thing I do is gone.
Yeah.
I'm changed. I used to be a slob. I'm now super detailed neat freak. And it's like I like to think that I had this person inside me who I am now. They were inside of me, but they were so trapped inside that they just were living inside a husk of it. And I
Mm.
couldn't be who I was. So I like assumed a persona,
Mm.
and that's what I showed the world because the world accepted that. So getting to like refine my values as an adult really let me chase being a high like striving person. Because like when I became 22 and I was like, I want to be someone who does things or does the hard way.
Yeah.
I had the ability to choose that as an adult and go for it. So I didn't have to like go through it as a kid going, okay, I want to do this and then failing.
I don't know if that many kids get to do that.
That's
I
the
don't
thing
think.
is kids don't get to.
Yeah,
So
but I
it's
think
hard for them.
a lot of great people go back to that choice and make it at some point in their life, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, where I think we're all very lucky to have that opportunity.
Yeah. I had I like have a very large amount of like psychological background in my childhood. Like the events that happen, like negative childhood events, they usually call them. I think
Hmm.
like death of a parent. Parents are young, or they are. Bluefrost is here. Welcome,
Hey,
welcome.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
Guys, but I had a meeting like something come up and that it was
Sorry.
super last minute.
it's okay.
It's
Stuff
okay.
like
We got the recording going. You want to just chip in on your thoughts on the book? We were getting into some wrapped up stuff, but go ahead.
uh, yeah, well, I'll say My big takeaway is just the power of just how easy it is for people to become corrupted.
Hmm.
Like,
The
and
It's
like
sort of like your
the
take.
the
Yeah.
frailty of human, like the frailty of virtue. And again, this I do have a bit of a bias here because I'm as someone who was part of a big tech layoff, and like
Yeah, cool.
I've had these thoughts of like you know
Where's the
like I will say something that's what people is like you have more faith in humanity than I do. And like that's why I really like again the book club we started or like offshoot of the book club soon after that happened, and I was like oh please telling 101. That's like that is how I'm feeling. It's like with any as anybody grows in power, right? Or like as a company grows, there are these like systemic traits that always just come with the territory, and like those fundamental things have to be torn down.
one thing I'll note is he talked about in the beginning, like the same thing I told Yufei. We all is a lot of people have the latent potential to do these things inside of us if the environment prompts us to.
Hmm.
It's like
And
an example actually I'm thinking about now that I didn't have earlier is toxicity in League. Some people when exposed to toxic conditions become toxic. Like
A lot of people.
it's very hard to be someone who doesn't do that. But it's like if you take them out of that toxic scenario, they're not toxic anymore. Like
yeah,
it's just
you
like
take
that.
You
and
hear
I
these
think that's what
stories on BBC.
happens in RP 101 is be that pressure to go go clean the Jews out of the city we just took,
Yeah.
or like that. And you met and like actually another companion to this is it's just another similar miniseries. I'm not sure if it's still, I don't think it's on. It might still be on Netflix, but it's called in English it's called Generation War, and but in German it's Unsere Mutter, unsere Vater,
Hmm.
unsere Vater. Like, and that is a story of that revolves around five friends in Germany.
Hmm.
Two brothers who are in the Wehrmacht. There's a woman aspiring to become like a musician,
Mm-hmm.
a a Jew, who's actually a Jew,
Mm-hmm.
and then the fifth is another woman who goes off to become a frontline nurse.
Hmm.
And it's 3 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
like around an hour long. But you see what the environment is doing to them, like the environment of
Mm.
you
Okay.
know Nazism advancing that agenda, that ideology,
Yeah.
How
and
long is
it's just
it?
a good like again just figured that'd be a good like companion
Three
piece
episodes, you
to
said?
yeah, it's just 3 episodes.
But
It's like a
like
mini
an
series.
hour or
They're like an
2 hours?
hour each, so
Okay.
it's like around 3 hours total. But
What's it called?
it's called
Generation War.
Generation War.
Generation War. Yeah, that's
Let me get a note for that real quick.
Sounds interesting.
yeah.
That's kind of like your take, Brad.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like it's very much the exposure to that environment.
Let's do 90-minute parts.
Okay.
Oh, 9 minutes. Yeah, but you talk about
Life in Germany
yeah,
during World War II.
and there's like a yeah, it's pretty.
No,
I will say
I'll be
there's
there for
some
it.
yeah, I will say there's definitely some criticisms about like
There's
you
always
know
some.
not oh it's not going enough into the Holocaust or stuff like that.
I remember when we read Man Search for Meaning. Remember how Viktor Frankl he made a point of avoiding certain topics about like in the Holocaust like, discussion.
Did he?
Yeah, especially about like the brutalities.
Hmm.
Like he did not talk about a lot of them. He avoided them.
Hmm.
And
Imagine
he
probably
said it's
bring
been covered or whatnot. It's like I kind of feel like that was like a moment where he kind of took the easy way on that one.
perhaps
I don't know if
although
I agree.
Well, it's
yeah
like
I
I
don't
think about that's the I don't want to do it because I feel like other people have done it, but it's just
well there's I think well counterpoint there's well one that's maybe it triggers like traumatic
oh yeah, I'm not
experiences.
saying he can't be
That's one
triggered by
thing.
it.
Second, there's sort of a what value can you add add. So it's like, again, if other people have, maybe he is satisfied with how it's already been discussed, it's like, oh, I don't think I can add anything like
There's
super
also like
valuable.
I think maybe I would
what
put
value do you want to add, right? Like if your focus is on a specific thing, which for him is very much,
like survival.
yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know if
Maybe it's this. Like
I
feel
don't know
like
if everything needs to cover.
yeah, like
I don't blame his choice. It's more I just didn't like the reasoning he gave.
Hmm.
hmm.
I don't know. I could see.
Like it felt like that's not. You're right. It feels like he's saying he doesn't like might trigger him for something like that, and that's fine. Like I don't
Yeah, it's,
mind if he says this kind of thing. It's like, the negative events are not like what I want to cover on in this book.
Well, I mean, he does cover negative events, right? Like
Well,
I think it's
not
more
the
the brutality.
the brutalities of genocides.
yeah,
I
like
don't know. Sorry, go on.
yeah, it's a bit. That's I could, and I feel like that's kind of like a good point to end on, is on that, just that note of, you don't have to necessarily agree with the reasoning, but
I could also
that's
see
like that's the reasoning. And
myself
it's like, if you
being,
don't agree with it, then
yeah.
I
it's ultimately not your choice.
We can actually, by the way, before the meeting call ends, do you want to go start up a new one? Because like I got a recording going. We can just keep going. Like
Oh yeah, we can go. Yeah, go
That's
ahead and
fine.
do that.
Yufei, what time you have
Although I
available
think
this
I
week?
have I got Google One, so I can probably go ahead and whip up a new one.
I mean, whatever you want to do. Like, we'll just get a new
Yeah,
call started because I think it's gonna end in a moment here.
I should be
Yeah,
fine for a little bit. Probably like
Okay, yeah,
9:15.
yeah, I'll go
yeah.
make a new
We'll
one
go for another
because
15.
I
Oh
can
yeah,
go
so
for more than an hour.
let's exit out of here and then post it in the Discord.
All right.
All right.
Oh, weird. I have to admit you guys to the meeting.
I had to do the same for you guys.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. I just
It's
remember
weird to be in the host shoes, eh?
when I wasn't at Google, I never had to do that. We just go right in
Yeah.
in the organization. It was like other, at google.com email addresses, but
Yeah.
just a funny little
Okay.
whip that's like, oh, so this is what's like not using Google tools and not being at Google.
Yeah, that's like that's the standard workflow for that one. Okay.
What's Google
Yeah,
One?
Google One is just a program. Like
they're
Oh,
like well, although I should be. Wait, don't I already have this?
cameras
Oh,
very high up.
I actually don't. You have to get a premium plan.
hmm.
Oh, I did. That gives you longer.
Yeah, no, that's you
Even
can go
longer.
for like
I'm in the tier. I thought my tier covered it, but no,
okay.
I was wrong.
Yeah, you should get the 1 free hour. Like, that's what I was just on right now. So you can always
Yeah,
start a new one.
I just think I had a Google One, but I didn't. I wasn't at the level that gives you longer calls.
Hmm.
So
So we were talking about. I guess you're still talking about Frankel,
Yeah, we were on Franklin.
but yeah, I don't know. Like I think there are times where I mean the brutality of the Holocaust is not like the only part of his identity, right? And if he has other goals, I mean, there are times where I want to talk about something else,
Maybe
and that is my main point. And if someone wanted my opinion on like a specific other part of my identity, I'll give it, but I'm not going to explicitly talk about it because I don't feel like it adds that much.
I'll give Franco credit on this one actually to say it might just be me because I have this personality of if I sense that someone's not being genuine with what their statement is,
Hmm.
I judge heavily for it. I don't like when people make inauthentic statements about themselves or their motivations. That's just
Hmm.
kind of me. So when I see a statement I feel like is not really like telling the real reasons for something, or is not like what he might actually be feeling, but he might not really want to share his actual feelings on something like that. Like sometimes you don't want to say that though, like openly.
Maybe. I mean,
Yeah, and I
it's
found
hard
like
to
another
say.
Holocaust hero, Vitol Pilecki,
Yeah,
the inmate, if you know inmate 4859.
I don't think I haven't heard myself. No,
You
I
haven't heard
haven't
that
heard of
story?
him.
But,
no.
oh, that's just another story because
Can you so what is it?
so
It's in the chat.
TLDR, he faked
Oh.
identity documents. It's actually part of the
Oh.
he infiltrated Auschwitz with fake. He's like, yeah, I'll go to Auschwitz and like figure everything out. He was planning to infiltrate and just take it down from within,
Mm-hmm.
and then he, his plan was like, all right, I'll organize the opposition, and then people are gonna come in and get us out. But when that didn't happen, he escaped him. He flee himself, bringing a bunch of secret documents that to like expose everything.
Do you guys know much about saints?
It's just like
Like Christian
in general.
saints?
Yeah.
Christian
A
saints.
bit.
Not that much, but
There's one Christian saint. He's the saint of prisoners and drug addicts, and he was killed in a Holocaust camp.
really.
Yeah,
Saint Maximilian.
Saint Maximilian Kolbe.
Maximilian Kolbe,
Yep.
Polish Catholic priest and a Franciscan friar. He volunteered died in the place of a man named Franciszek Ga-
Gauss
Gajownicek.
in the German death camp of Auschwitz, right
Yeah.
before they were about to like get freed.
Is this like
He's a
Polish
Yeah.
friar. Yeah,
yeah. He was a very interesting one for me, like to hear like that kind of sacrifice.
yeah. This one's this one's very.
And obviously, with my background, like he's patron saint of drug addicts, and I was like, what's that? Very interesting to me. But it's also the patron saint of prisoners, which is
Oh yeah. Okay. So I'm just looking at the context. Yeah, because Franciszek, he's like my wife, my children. And then he volunteered.
yeah, exactly.
hmm.
And it's I don't like know like how accurate like the story of like his death is. Like they say,
Yeah.
they say he led a bunch of people in prayer for like days in like
Yeah.
during a hunger thing when they're supposed to like starve to death, and eventually he just didn't die, so they just injected him full of something, and he dies.
Mm.
The
But yeah, it's
yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
the idea behind it, and the saving your life for someone else, sacrificing. It's good, commendable.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So, do you want to share your takeaway, Brad? Because it's so similar
Oh, on what? On specific?
on Ordinary Men.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. You remember Bluefrost? You had not heard it. For me, the book was really valuable in regards to being able to understand what it's like from the position of the perpetrator. Like a lot of the times, if I feel like I'd expose myself to media about like these kind of events like massacres, you're gonna hear about it from the victims or the side that's being, or the side that was being oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna hear their thoughts, their like wrongs, and like how they feel like they've been treated badly. You'll hear their thoughts. But this was from the perspective of the Germans, and that let me empathize and feel like I was, understanding what it'd be like to be in their shoes. And that gave me the value of like being able to understand like how hard it would be psychologically to go through this event, and what I would feel if I could resist it or not. Like, how would you feel like Bluefrost would if you were asked that question by Trap when he says, "Does anyone volunteer to not shoot?" Or like, "Does anyone cannot do it?" How do you think you would answer?
The really, I'm gonna really depends. Like you're talking about. I guess I'm trying to think of
Just as
remember the context. Just
it's
think
before
of
the first massacre.
the very first one.
Yeah, they're outside Jozefow. They rounds them up. He tells them what they're gonna do, and he says, "Does anyone want to like can't do this?"
Who, assuming
And if you
because
decide
right, so right, what we established is probably the very first one. So there's no precedent of like oh someone saying no and then like getting shot themselves or
no, there's like 12 people will like initially
Well,
say
you don't
no.
know that necessarily
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah. You don't know it yet.
Hmm.
Because the question is, if you didn't say no then, like, when would you say no? After how many times you shoot?
That yeah, that's one thing. Second thing you have to consider is
I think the way
being able to.
I
I
asked
definitely have
Yufei,
it.
like, the way I asked Yufei was, are you good at breaking away from the group, like, decision or consensus?
Mm,
Are you good at
I
standing on your ideas?
I think it's very situational, to be honest.
yeah, I'm sure there too. It's like I feel like I'm weighing like the risk reward
Yeah. Are you willing?
because it's like, do I want to become another statistic?
I
Although it's
something I've had a thought of before when I've talked with like the person I'm mentoring and like we haven't like discussed morality. If you're in a situation like this, it's better to die than to do it. And we mean that wholeheartedly. Of like, if I was in that scenario, I'd rather die.
like you maybe go up there and just like last second shoot yourself instead, maybe.
No, I mean like I would rather they kill me than me actually do it.
I feel like I'd rather. I feel like if I were to go like that route, then I like end up shooting myself. Like no, I am doing on my
I
no,
mean,
sort of like go on my terms.
yeah, that's one way to think about it. Like I would just say
Yeah,
like I'm
I
not.
definitely like having. I have this like no would rather like there's a time I got there's actually a time I got banned from a gaming community, but after some but I kind of exposed their mod as being like the mod being like gaslighting and like a bit of I exposed the mod as being a bit of an asshole, and then I ended up getting myself unbanned, but I chose not to rejoin because it was like
Maybe
I know as a I literally did that just so I could be leave on my own terms.
I think that maybe like the difference there is like that sounds like you've gone along with it, and then you're put in a situation where now you have to go through with it. Whereas I would just stand and say no, at like early on, and then if they punish me for that, I would accept it. Whereas I wouldn't go along and get to the point where I'm holding the gun at the person and I'm like, I'm gonna have to shoot them or I shoot myself. I would just say no. You can punish me if you want to, but I'm not doing it.
Hmm.
But, like that's like how I
So,
would approach it at
yeah,
least.
it's actually I'm remembering how it played out. I think I'm trying. I don't think anyone
No, there
volunteered
was
to
like
shoot,
12.
did they?
12 out of 5
Yeah.
people.
Two actually said agreed, and then
Like they said they can't. They're not gonna do it.
12 said they couldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they wouldn't. They wouldn't.
And do we know if they? I'm trying to remember if
They
they.
didn't get punished. They were actually protected. They got protected.
But they didn't know that. They
Yeah,
didn't
they
know
didn't know
that
it was gonna
when they
happen like
spoke
that,
out.
and none of them knew it was gonna happen. They didn't know
I
it would occur.
I
They did
guess
get.
yeah.
They got berated and ridiculed still, but they were not.
I
They didn't know what
imagine
to do.
that you get berated by the other 488 for like being
Anyone who.
cowards.
Yep. People who did shoot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be my ideal answer. Is I would stand up for my values, etc. I just don't
Yeah.
know. I think it's
It's
very
a matter of can you do it
context
in
dependent.
practice. Yeah,
I mean,
it's also one of those can you do it in practice. It's a very
it's like your mental stack. If you've never thought about that scenario and someone springs it on you and gives you like 5 minutes to respond, I think it's a totally different ask. And that's why I said like I don't know if I would. I hope I would, but if I didn't, it probably would be around like the first time I shoot at
Yeah.
that point. But I
yeah.
mean,
It's also just inherently too easy to answer that question. Like right now, it's way too easy to
yeah,
answer because we have, like I said, we have the benefit of hindsight. We're detached. It's like you
Well,
can't really
well, the
you
thing
have
is,
that litmus test of
I
no.
think you can, like, if you have the right approach to it. Like, only because, like, I think of like when I said that question of like I'd rather die. I mean that very genuinely. So I live in a very present moment of if I say that I wouldn't do it, wouldn't do it. Like it doesn't change once I'm in the moment because I've put me in the moment. I'll still walk. I'll still do the hard choice. I guess I just have a very different view on like my life of how I value. Like I'm willing to die for my beliefs very easily if I had to. I
hmm.
martyr myself for my beliefs all the time,
Hmm.
and that's very self-sacrificing.
I
Like
think I've done that in some areas, mainly where it's like cause I do come off like very blunt. Like again, I'm gonna call it duck a duck, and I feel like that kind of stuff is cost me in like the job search.
yeah, Well, I wouldn't say like it's so much that I'm blunt. It's just that I'm unyielding about things.
Yeah, I kind of with you there. Like, there's still, I remember having to fight my career coach a lot and like not wanting to be open to relocation. She like said like, oh, there are these opportunities you have, which you could have easily gotten them if you were just willing to relocate for a year. And I was like, that was an area where I like put my foot down. I was like, no, I don't, no, I'm not going to, because I gave my reasoning.
It's fine.
So, but
Yufei, you said you want to go till like 9:15. So you want to
Yeah.
wrap up any closing thoughts?
Do you want to do?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess I'll do closing thoughts and then we can do ratings real quick.
yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
I told Brad that I felt like it didn't. I thought it was a fine book. I felt like it didn't add too much new for me, mostly because I feel like I've pondered these concepts for a very long time. I mean, I've always kind of said that I think the world is sort of a cycle of violence, and that I think it's important to know that any one of us could do very terrible things in the right context. And I think it's important to mentally prepare yourself to say no when that time comes, and to know your values. But I don't think there's ever a way to guarantee 100% that you'll always say no. But I think the takeaway for me is that to keep in mind a lot of these obstacles that prevent you from immediately standing up, which is mostly kind of detachment from what your actual consequences of what you're doing. I think Skin in the Game is a very relevant book for this phenomena, and also just remembering that you might fail to say no immediately if it's sprung on you fast enough and you're only given like half a second to think and everyone's saying yes. I think you might, but even that in that situation, it's important to then acknowledge that that can happen and say no once you catch yourself.
I'm trying to think about the conditions under which I would fail to do my values.
I think if I like,
I would
held
have to
all of
be
your
able.
family hostage at gunpoint and you at gunpoint, and I say in 1 second you have to make this decision, and then everyone is also screaming at you saying,
Well, yeah,
do it.
fear for the harm of those close you care about. That actually is a very powerful motivator, like towards
Yeah.
me to compromise my values.
I think there is always some kind of, and most
everyone's
of
got
them
a
are
breaking point. I
realistic.
think it's what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
But most of
Yeah,
us are also probably not going to be in the army
there's
trying
always
to,
something that will make us compromise ourselves, though.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
I think it's important at that point to catch yourself and feel empowered enough to change your mind and say, no, I'm actually not going to do it.
well,
What,
because
like
what if
once you realize,
I'm saying, like my resting state is I wouldn't do it, but if there's something like it was going to cause harm to those I care about, that causes me to compromise and then do it.
yeah.
And I
So, I
have
mean,
a problem
that's
of like if I'm compromising my values for something like that, I compromise my values to an extreme degree. Like I will become the most utmost efficient of whatever I'm doing.
you just shoot everyone.
No, it's like I just would find like the way to make it is like less burdensome on everyone. Like find a way to make it like don't focus on it, do this, find techniques to not do it. That's the
Yeah.
kind of person I am. Is I hyper optimize anything I'm doing, even if it's things that are not great.
That might have been what a lot of these people did.
Because it's
Hmm.
that way I can focus on how the optimization's going instead of what we're actually doing.
The way to detach yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're like optimizing, say you're optimizing like for your own survival,
Yeah, I'm like
optimizing for.
for my comrades too. Probably it's like if I could, it's like I'd be trying to focus on their like health and like I'd be thinking about their well being in some way, like to detach myself out of it. Like
It's
anything I can do, I'll
fairly
do that.
common defense mechanism.
Especially for
Hmm.
I try and like help other people as a way of like detaching myself from my own situations.
Yeah. I imagine there's some people who actively did that
Yeah.
in this book, in this battalion, frankly. Do you want to do final ratings? I can go
Yeah, yeah,
first.
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to give this, I don't know. I feel like it's a personal 6 out of 10.
Mhm.
I think for other people who haven't been exposed to certain like concepts as much, it's as good of a book as any though. And it could easily be higher if it's like someone's first exposure to it.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
Bluefrost.
I'm gonna give it more like an 8.5, just because it's mainly because it's like sure I've been exposed, I've being exposed to it, and it's like something that a bit of a thing that I agree with of you know anyone's ca- anyone's capable of doing evil evil things, and then the inherent nature of evil things coming with a certain territory.
Hmm.
Like the idea of no, there's no ethical billionaire.
Yeah.
I like that phrase.
So yeah, or like especially like in the states here, is like when you get to when your company's like big enough, you're inevitably you kind of go to shit in some ways,
Yeah.
and it's no, no, mainly like sure they're just a product, a systemic product of a shitty system, and then it's like if you want to, you have to like tear the system down.
Something that I'm thinking about is the book is a big example about how if no one stands up or speaks against things, everyone will just follow along.
But even people, I mean, people spoke against it.
Well, it's like if people aren't willing to like oppose it directly, like say they won't do it, like this is like enough people didn't do it, so like it didn't become like.
Yeah,
Do you think if
and
half
actually
of the
I'm talking about
battalion,
normalization. I guess I'm talking about normalization of things.
you get desensitized, and like there's a thing I've had, is something I've actually said is something I've said to my therapist is that like blood is the cost of blood is the price of righteousness.
I mean that's true. That's true. Can I have more context on it too?
Well, it's just the fundamental idea that in order to preserve what is right, like no, again, due to humanity's
Hmm.
natural inclination towards evil,
Based on.
if you want, you have to actively like again, if nothing, this ties in with all that evil people need to do to succeed is like no good men do nothing.
I guess like I don't really like the terms good and evil most of the time. It's too black and white.
Mm, I guess I don't know. Maybe this is just kind of still like a jade cynical
that's a
perspective.
very philosophical discussion.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll say I've mentally descended to points where I've unironically, where I've said with like, where I've like unironically been like, no, World War III wouldn't be the worst thing to happen.
I think that that
as
might
like
be.
a, as like a, I don't give a shit if the entire world gets destroyed. Like
Well,
no, it's all
here's
fucked anyway.
no. Here's what I would say. In doing software, my personal like tech experiences, I've found like by going to back pages and like reading blogs about like dev posts and stuff, and seeing the people who give dedicated work to just keep small things running. There's a lot of like effort in like sustainability and like pro social behavior that goes into like people like working together in the tech community, especially. And it's how the whole internet can function in a way. But that's given me a per se of like this viewpoint of the world's not gone to shit as much as we think, but it's just that people who realize or like kind of have like the awareness like we do here, they don't really speak out on places you're going to see it easily. And that makes it so you don't see it at all sometimes, and it can look very dark. The world's not that
Yeah.
bad though. There's a lot of good in the world.
I mean, it's also, yeah, I mean, the people who are doing those things probably don't. It's not very natural that it comes with the type of personalities to talk about it a lot either. And it's also
Well,
not that useful for them to do it.
exactly. It's like I thought about this like all the media you see like on Facebook, Reddit, and Twitter, it's very surface level. It has to be public approval or it gets like voted down and will get squashed. People who have like ideas that might not be publicly like the most popular opinions, you're not going to get them across on those platforms, so they're not going to show there. But you might be able to go to certain places like Stack Overflow. You might be able to get them there, but you're not going to find them on like the really high level surface media, and
It's
that's
like
kind
you
of a
have to
shame.
go, like kind of yeah, but
You got to go by
yeah,
like forums and clubs and discords like this,
yeah.
and
I still have like again, again I still have that bias of like humanity naturally veers towards evil. That's the natural inclination of man, and
we
you
can
have
go over
to
that later if you want. Actually,
you
but
have to keep
Yeah.
in is like to keep that's why I go the whole blood is the price of righteousness or
yeah, I just want to
like
give my I'm gonna give you my rating, and then Yufei, if you want to head out, you're good. Like, and we can continue the evil talk if you like Bluefrost. But I just want to get started. Okay, I'm gonna give it a 9. I
It's
think
pretty
that
high.
I'd give it a 10 if it wasn't for the fact it was kind of like really disorganized in the structure. It was very all over the place. Like when we talked about how it starts in Jozefow, goes backwards in time, then winds back up there. It's like it was really hard to follow timeline wise sometimes. Like I had no idea where I was in time.
mm, I'll say counterpoint. That's not like there's like what a frame story is.
I'm not sure I've heard of the term or phrase. No.
Well, it's
A framing story, you said?
or like a frame story like structure where you have a story
Yeah.
within a story. Like
It's
that's
just kind of
actually
like it's a really short
Well, there's
frame, and
also the
it's
documentation style of the book too, like how everything was like just like like an accounting of like this many killings here, 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 here. It was really easy to all blur.
I felt like it was framed kind of strangely.
yeah.
Like I sort of get what they were trying to do, but I don't understand the
I,
execution as much.
I think when I think about this though, it's like he had to write it that way. He can't make up details that aren't there. He can't like
Yeah,
guess what was happening in these times. He has to
you have to
say
be pretty
what
point.
was
It's
actually
like
on the
you
record.
have to be. Yeah, you're constrained there, and there's the subject matter. But the idea of, but like the idea of like you go like you're going to the end and then you go back in time. It's like you kind of
Well, just
frame
if it
that
was the middle,
point, or like
especially if it was in the middle at most.
starting in the middle and you're going back, but you as a way of like
Yeah,
a way
setting
of
up
like hooking somebody in, and then you set that, and it's like no, this is sort of why.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. It doesn't look true though. It's just it was really odd to follow because like it took a long time to get back to Jozefow. It felt like
Hmm.
it was a very long time to get back there in the book. Chapter 7, and like during that whole time of 1 through 6, I'm like, or 2 through 5, it's like what happened? What like to that like previous story? But yeah, it's like I really like the book, especially the like perspective on it. Like I think it's a very good perspective just to be able to get to hear about the side of the people who did the acts. Like
Yeah, that was a fascinating thing about Generation War as well. Is like we never. I feel like we're like all quiet on the Western Front, like that's similar vein of there's sides to the story that we are often like suppressed,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
and or if you think about yeah, like I feel like that's something we it goes in no, it sort of goes on the point of history books are written by the winners,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
or
Here,
like the perception of like who's right and who's wrong.
Yufei, you're good to head out anytime you want to.
Yeah, that's
Um,
something that we
You want to
don't.
stick
I feel
around
like that's something
too,
we
or I
lack.
just want to say get.
Again, I feel like that's something we kind of just naturally lack, and it's important.
Well, I want to get into the
It's
discussion of humankind's like inclination towards evil with you. So
I'll head out, but
all
it's
right.
good to see you.
I to
Yufei.
add in, I
Yeah, yeah.
am also a moral nihilist, although I am values and virtues wise, I believe in good and evil in terms of like things for me to do. I don't think there's anything inherent
You
though.
believe in good and evil, though?
I believe that. I mean, I think good and evil are sort of societal constructs, and
Yeah.
that they serve the overall species. I don't think there's anything. If I had to guess, and I don't know, I'm like religiously agnostic, but
Same.
I
Atheist
think,
here.
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's
Uh,
anything inherently good or evil in the universe, but I
Yes,
think
it is.
that said, there's definitely good and evil within like our society in terms of what's good for humankind and what's not.
yeah, like you think about other species. Oh,
And so
like you think
I
about
think
like
Well, and
carnivorous species. Like yeah, they're literally killing things,
that's
but
I call it
that just
humanity.
happens.
yeah, but I
Because
don't think that
this trait of like being a good human, it's like that's humanity.
yeah,
Because it's only a trait that you're applying to your person as a person, but it's not a worldly thing. Like nature
And
doesn't have
non
good or evil.
yeah, nature it doesn't exist in nature.
Nature
It's
doesn't
a
have humanity.
yeah.
well, yeah.
I'll leave on that note.
Okay.
Have
So
fun, guys.
Good seeing
all
you,
right,
Yufei.
all right.
Yeah.
Who's ready? All right, let's get existential as hell.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you the question like to wrap this up though is why is it you feel humankind is like, inclined towards evil if we just established that evil is a human construct?
Let's say one area less more so. I think maybe more like self-serve. Maybe it's more like self-serving.
Yeah,
Might be a better way to
that's
put
that's true.
it.
We're all innately more like I think that every single person is innately a narcissist. We're
Yeah,
born narcissists.
I would literally consider like somebody has said it's democracy is like a no amalgamation of selfish interests. Do do enough people have the same selfish interests as you?
Well, it's like I think that when we're all born narcissists, we learn to not be. Like I learned how to not be a narcissist. and that was
Or you
where
have to be taught to like not think about yourself, and
yeah, exactly. You have to be like learn to think of others beyond yourself.
yeah, that's like a societal thing, and I think naturally,
We naturally only think of ourselves because that's
yeah,
all we
like the
know.
natural, self survival instinct, and that
That's innate
and
narcissism.
it's like those, and because those I say those very much tend to have a cost of others, which is
Mhm.
so
Decisions
one
made.
person's actions can be their natural self-preserving actions can be seen as evil by everybody else because
Tragedy of
it's
the commons. Do you know that?
kind of
Like
yeah,
one person's
I
like,
know about that with enough people,
well, it's like the idea is like this. I can do this. Won't hurt the thing, and it's what I
but
need.
if enough people do it, it's gonna hurt,
Yeah.
or like if enough people do some, or like
The
enough
example,
people do
the example
something,
they usually give is
or
like,
like a city gets big enough, like oh, it's all gets
well, here's the example they usually give. It's usually the example is like cattle grazing on grass. A
yeah.
farmer takes their cattle to graze on grass.
Mhm.
He thinks it's okay if I do it. But the thing is, if every farmer does that, then the
The
grass
grass is
all
gone.
dies. It's all
Hmm.
gone. And
Hmm.
that's like thinking, I can, not recycle, or I can, not, do these eco-friendly things.
But the thing is,
And
they're
if people do
ultimately
that, then you
like a
get bad.
size hurts there. Or I think of I thought this was like
It's
referrals. You get to a point where people like give out or like oh I have a referral link, and then like ultimately those referrals like lose their value. Like this,
mhm.
it's like the
It's not
is
even.
this also a general like is like this bias towards scarcity.
Yeah. I do
But
want to touch on
yeah,
again though. Is why is it you believe that humans are evil in their inclination towards it naturally though? Back to
I
that.
back to that. It's the self-serving actions not have a high tendency to
Harm others.
you're naturally harming others. Like it's like for you no, it's like for you to go up, others have to go down.
Well, I don't think it's that black and white. I think it's more just like there's more often you're either going to do something that doesn't harm anyone else at all. It might sometimes benefit other people, but very often will come at a cost to someone else. But I don't think that that's a guaranteed like up must have a down established with it because that's a zero sum.
Well, well, think about being on the ladder, right? Like, if
Yeah,
I want to go up, if I want to
that's
go
a
up the ladder, others have to go down.
true.
But
But
like
that's a very
also going
unique
up,
example though. Like
but
that is a
but
competitive
also if you
game
want to go up like a corporate ladder,
because
you
they
want to
can make
gain
new positions. They can
go to
make new
more
ones.
power.
New positions become available like out of nowhere. If you have the resources and funds, those positions suddenly can be affordable, and they just add new people. It doesn't always have to be a down. Like when you downsize, there's no up or down. It's just down. Like that's it doesn't always have an equivalent exchange.
Hmm. But I guess we can go back to, but I guess that still doesn't necessarily change the fact that again, humans
We will
naturally
just think they're
we
selfish.
naturally act in self-preservation is the natural course of action.
We're naturally selfish, yes.
Yeah, natural selfishness, and then I say a lot of the time, those our self-preserving actions will cause negative effects towards others.
Here, I think there's actually a term for this. It's called egocentric, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess.
it's thinking about only of oneself without regard or feelings or desires of other people.
Yeah, I think
Self-centered.
it's because the egocentrism is naturally, and being on the other side of it, you're seeing it as a inclination towards evil because it's inclination towards things that harm you, and you have to, and then it takes a, and like resisting that is very difficult.
Well, it's
You have
all
to act very,
it's
if you want,
society. Ideally, you don't have to do anything to be like overcome egocentrism. Your parents have to do it all. If your environment is proper and you learn how to like pro-social behavior, it's not hard to overcome egocentrism. It's when you don't get that proper like upbringing that it becomes very hard for people.
but also if you get to when you get high enough, but then again, you think about other people in power.
Well, I'm saying like if we all like as children can unlearn this thing, the people like you won't even have it later in life if you didn't learn as a child.
then I guess counterpoint is like, does that mean people who end up getting into positions of power were like not given that instruction, that tutelage?
Well, I mean, some people in power have certainly are egocentric, but not everyone is. Not everyone. It's just more
Uh,
likely for people with that kind of like personality traits to have the ability to climb because they are willing to cut corners.
I'd say willing to cut corners or
They're willing to hurt
willing to.
others and like do things that will harm others to get the power. Yes, but it's not guaranteed that they're the only ones who do. Like there are some good people in power.
Yeah,
Some.
very few though. And you think of these easy paths, these natural paths.
I wouldn't call them natural. It's just they're willing to like cheat and cut. You know, play the game unfairly to others. It's not natural though. It's just opportunistic.
Machiavellianism.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it natural though. Natural is like
Yeah.
nature. Nature doesn't do what humans do.
Yeah, it's sort of a there's that strong correlation of like people who get to
Yes, there's.
people who end up getting up into the influential positions are doing things that harm others. So
Yeah.
and then you talk about that will being imposed on others. We think of what that leads to is a inclination towards evil.
There is some like statistics I've seen about like when you have bullies, they'll bully like other people, and then there's the middle layer of people who get bullied by a bully, but to get the bullying to stop, they end up bullying others for the bully. Basically, it's a social like hierarchy ladder. Like if you're in the middle bully, you are like gonna go along with what the bully says and pick on people, so you don't get targeted. Like that's what something I notice happens sometimes. Like you're either going to be the person who's on top, in the middle, or the bottom. And
You talk about like that's the only thing. See, and that's what trickles down, not money.
well, yeah, I think everything in life is a social hierarchy like struggle.
Yeah, and like these social hierarchies and struggles that we've
We can't get out of it.
those
It's our
have
nature. Like we are extremely social creatures, like by nature.
yeah, and a lot of it, and it's like and fundamentally, like, I'd say a lot of those societal constructs ideally I would tear them down. Like if I got into power, I would be tearing down a lot of things.
So one thing I'll say on this comment though is, I think a lot of times we don't give enough respect to how social we are as a creature by evolution. In that regard, there are certain aspects of our like behavior that I don't think can be removed. They are too like a much a part of like what it is to be a human being. Like the way we communicate and empathize and like we have these like anxiety feelings, the way we like you know how we communicate to other human beings, like reading the facial expressions or our feelings of inadequacy around other people. These are very human aspects of us that I don't.
Very lower,
Yeah, they're like
but
very
they but
core.
they
I don't
but
think they can be
they
removed.
come from very or probably maybe because they come very close. There's I guess like you talk about like layers removed from
Mm-hmm.
what's truly natural. The
Yeah,
things very those things come from areas that are I
like
either like
central. Yeah,
directly connected to like hard natural traits
yeah,
or or no maybe one or two layers removed compared to something that's like 10 layers removed.
yeah. They're very close to the center of us, and I don't
Yeah,
think that can be removed. And that's why these traits and like behaviors of like what you said, the tendency towards evil or like egocentrism. That's why it always exists because it's really just core to us. Like imposter
mhm.
syndrome is another one. Why does
Yeah,
everyone feel like an imposter? Because it's really core to how we are. Like we have this fear that we're not actually capable of things, and that pushes us
the
to
fear of
become
like
better.
or like a fear of failure.
Yeah, our fear of failure
Like
drives us
rank
so
anxiety,
hard.
like that's what rank anxiety comes from. Is a very natural
Yeah, it's like think about
thing.
how like perfect that is for nature though. I'm gonna make it so they're really anxious about failing, so that way they keep trying to improve. Like it's
Or
a
like
self-sustaining. You never
kind
stop.
of
It's you
I
never
don't
stop trying to
fully
improve it in a way.
I
You're driven
guess,
to
but you
improve.
talk but there's a part of people who will see that and then like act to improve, but then there's some that like curl up and run away.
Well, like, yeah, even if you're running away, you're doing something at least, though. It's like
True.
it drives you to act, though, is all.
Yeah, I think that's a more accurate term. Drives you to make an action, whether that action.
It's good or bad, or it's like run away from the thing or get better at the thing and like overcome it.
Yeah, like that's why I like initially
It's a powerful
when
nature.
ultimately like yeah, and I had that sort of like where I was oh I might go apply to grad school to like get out know about the job market, but then it's like I was ultimately ended up like not applying because it was like okay I'm not doing this for the right reason. I'm not doing this to like I feel like I'm not doing this primarily to improve myself,
Yeah.
but it's more to avoid something.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, if I did that, I don't think I'd. No,
Well,
I
it's,
don't
it's
think
important
I'd.
to remember that like humanity, like our nature, is not adapted to our society
Right,
because
because
we have like
genetically.
ideas and like things we have to do as a modern human. Nature had no idea what those were. Like
Well, yeah,
friendships, relationships that like with other people, and like jobs.
or things like yeah. I mean, think of like visitors. Think of things like pinky toes.
Going to school.
Yeah, I was or things like pinky toes. Like these were way bigger hundreds of thousands of years ago. Why I think or things like your appendix. Like nature
Well, it's like what I'm saying is like
or
our
like a
like automatic
posture. I
like
wonder how are humans in like next like maybe think of like how human like spines are going to be in the next like 1,000 years or 5,000 years. That
it's
might be an
probably gonna be
interesting.
great. No, what I mean to say is like our tendencies like for our fight or flight responses and these kind of things that were core to us is like when we're back in primal times or earlier years.
Yeah,
They're not as useful nowadays often.
yeah, and
They
I guess there's a
they're
point where
almost like inhibitory to us.
yeah, and also just nature being slow to adapt.
Yeah, yeah,
Because if you think about our bodies versus bodies like 20,000 years ago,
yeah. But that's the thing is like
there's always
old
that lag.
we have the old fashioned things like our amygdala. When you get it hijacks your brain and you can't think because it has shut down your prefrontal cortex,
Yeah,
like that negative feedback loop, that's not useful these days a lot of the times. It's extremely bad for us almost.
yeah, like with little hijacks or like I guess you wonder how.
It's just crazy. Like when I first learned about
Like,
how that
do
works.
we have like I want to see it. They're like amygdala sizes of like 10,000 years ago.
Well, I
I
don't
saw
think
that
it's going to be so much shown in the size, but just maybe it is actually.
maybe. Well, you think of these where and this thing with like technology and like governments and politics where it's like text moving way faster than like the policies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we are moving faster than like orders of magnitude faster than nature.
Yeah, culture is the second evolution of humans. I think about it like we have our evolution through our genes and biology, and then we have our evolution through culture. And that's we spread it and it trains and spreads. That's the secondary way we evolve, and it's the one that goes much faster.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think I'm gonna call it here.
Protocol. I was like, good thing
Well,
I
yeah,
came in
yeah.
and made it a
Yeah, I'm
bit
glad
made
you.
it a bit
I'm
interesting.
glad you
Hopefully,
joined in at the end there. Like me and Yufei were having a good discussion, and like, but it's like just two of us. So
yeah. I kind of forgot to like. I was like, got off that call. I'm like, oh shoot, did I shoot? I think I had something. And I
yeah,
checked the DM and I was like, oh right, I
I tried
forgot
to send
about
some
that.
notifications, so I was like,
Yeah,
but no, I'm glad
I
you
just
joined.
wasn't. I didn't have my phone. And I was like, yo, made it eventually.
Yeah, no,
And
thanks for joining in. All right. Well,
yeah,
I gotta end the recording, and then we will.
you go back to your process. Go back to your next 3 block.
Yeah, I need to get some work done still. Actually,
I was saying that
this
was
is
like a
like the end of the
just a
month is
message.
like my busiest time. And like, oh god, I got like this. I got another meeting tomorrow. I got a meeting this morning. I gotta get my invoice
Like,
ready for the month, and I gotta do some
well, I
editing.
guess what? Yeah, because you like freelance, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do freelance work. I'm a video editor and a research assistant, basically.
Gotcha.
But I run a team, and I have to like you know get everyone's assignments done, get things prepared, review all the footage,
Yeah.
and then do the actual video editing. So I've just got a lot on my plate for these next few days.
Oh.
But it is I'm glad we got this book done.
Yeah. I do kind of wish they're like
more.
I just remember that
people.
mobile position. It's like, oh wait, you worked for, wait, it was under the guy that didn't pay you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Josh is a real.
I guess you wonder how things are gonna go if you think about with like LCS orgs pulling out.
I mean, I saw something about how like it's a union move. They're not gonna pull out really.
But no, there's some orgs who were like trying to leave the LCS, like
Yeah,
TSM was
yeah.
doing that.
And
Those kind
the
of thing
players'
where it's like,
associations came together as well, though. And like,
yeah, thank goodness. And I would, I don't know, I would still say though, it would just be absolutely hilarious if you had like I don't know, there's some, I don't, grad comment like no, or it's like a huge comment like Hotline League, like no, let's do a bunch of Iron players run it down on LCS stage.
well, I mean, you have to pay $10 million to get into that. That's the buy-in to get an actual LCS spot.
No, I'm talking about for like players going on stage because the actual LCS pros are walking out. Apparently, Riot like suspended the requirements to be an LCS player or something.
Yeah, what they did is they suspended the requirements to have an academy team.
But I mean, what the no, I mean like directly in response to the walkout because so many actual players to walk out, and then they tried to get like academy players to play, but they said no.
Well, no, what they did is they said to the academy, like the LCS teams,
Yeah, yeah, that's
you can cut your academy teams basically. You don't have to have
yeah,
them.
yeah. But then I'm talking about like in response to the walkout,
I haven't seen
like
that yet, so
the
I'm gonna have to
Players
try to find
Association
events.
vote. Yeah, yeah. Apparently,
It's
so I
updated the
suppose.
other day.
Yeah, it's a day to day thing. I would say it would just be absolutely hilarious if you saw if Riot were so desperate to have like an LCS, that'd be like they're like Rons and Iron players on stage. I'm just saying that would be hilarious.
It would be kind of awkward for them to put the academy players on there because the academy players are the ones who just lost their jobs.
Well, yeah, yeah. And the academy player said we're like, hell no, we're not doing this.
Well, yeah, I don't even know if they could do that because the academy players aren't like willing to play.
I'll find the. I was like,
If you have a post or something about an article on this, I'm happy to see it, but I haven't seen.
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find that.
I'm gonna cut the recording here though.
Yeah, yeah. Travis Gafford. This